The sun hung high over Sunny Park, turning the grass into a sea of sharp, vibrating green. Baby Grandpa did not glance at the swings or the fountain. He kept his stride narrow and rhythmic, his gaze locked onto a single point of interest near the park entrance. A bright red ice cream cart sat under a striped umbrella, casting a long, rectangular shadow across the pavement. He dodged a stray ball, stepped over a discarded newspaper, and quickened his pace as the scent of artificial sugar hit the air. His intent was absolute. He reached the cart, his palms slapping firmly against the cold metal counter. The vendor glanced up, surprised by the sudden arrival. Baby Grandpa did not hesitate. He leaned in, his eyes wide and unblinking, tracking the heavy scoop resting inside the glass display. He tapped the counter twice, the hollow sound echoing against the quiet morning air. A mission had brought him here, and the cold metal of the cart was merely the first step toward achieving it. He waited for the vendor to acknowledge him, his breathing steady, his focus never wavering from the tubs of frozen, neon-colored cream. The vendor reached into the freezer, pulling out a neon-pink scoop that wobbled on the cone. Baby Grandpa snatched it, his fingers closing around the waffle with frantic energy. He took a bite so large his jaw clicked. The cold hit his palate instantly, a sharp, numbing sting that he ignored entirely. He chewed once, twice, and swallowed. A sudden, violent twitch seized his throat. His chest expanded, his face reddened, and a massive hic burp shattered the quiet of the park. With a sound like a pressurized seal breaking, a plastic capsule materialized right in his palm. He fumbled with the lid, his hands shaking with anticipation. The container popped open, revealing a Gasto-lantern toy. He held it up to the sunlight, his eyes widening as he examined the tiny, intricate details. He let out a sharp, breathless laugh, clutching the plastic figure against his chest. The toy was small, cold, and entirely unexpected, but it was his. He looked back at the vendor, his grin stretching wide, already signaling that the first taste was merely the beginning of his hunt for more. He did not wait for the vendor to reset. A sticky finger darted out, pointing directly at the tub of deep, artificial blueberry. The vendor hesitated, then plunged the metal scoop into the dense, dark blue mass. It was served in a fresh cup, but Baby Grandpa did not bother with a spoon. He leaned forward, face hovering over the rim, and inhaled the contents with rhythmic, wet gulps. His throat worked hard, muscles straining against the rapid descent of the freezing cream. He finished the cup in seconds, the blue stain spreading across his chin. Almost immediately, the pressure built in his chest. His shoulders hunched, his eyes squeezed shut, and the second hic burp erupted, louder and sharper than the first. A plastic sphere dropped from the air into his waiting hand. He ripped the seal, but his fingers slipped, sending the contents tumbling. A Disney Happy Places set clattered onto the grass. Tiny purple tables, miniature chairs, and shimmering plastic accessories scattered across the ground, creating a chaotic, colorful spread. He dropped to his knees, clawing at the treasures, his focus shifting from the ice cream to the pile of plastic growing at his feet. The final target was the orange tub. Baby Grandpa did not even wait for the vendor to reach for the scoop. He tapped the counter with such force that the metal tray rattled against the frame. The vendor sighed, moved the scoop with mechanical indifference, and deposited a sphere of bright, synthetic orange into the last remaining cup. Baby Grandpa grabbed it before it settled. He shoveled the cream into his mouth, not stopping to breathe, his jaw working in a rapid, repetitive rhythm. The cup was emptied in a blur of movement, scraped clean by his tongue until the bottom showed white. His chest began to heave, the rhythm of his breathing jagged and shallow. A deep, hollow sound rose from his stomach, vibrating through his ribcage. The third, hic, burp, tore through the air, vibrating the very trees in the park. A final plastic capsule materialized, falling into his palm with a heavy thud. He tore the casing apart, revealing two figures, Rala Kate and Tia Ice Cream Taco. They landed on top of the pile, joining the others in a mountain of plastic. He looked down, his lips pulled back in a wide, breathless grin, completely surrounded by his hoard of treasures. The grin remained, but the vendor did not share the joy. The vendor stepped back, eyes locked on Baby Grandpa's mouth, and let out a sharp, audible gasp. A finger pointed toward his face, shaking. Baby Grandpa blinked, his smile faltering as he sensed the shift in the air. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, circular hand mirror. He held it up to catch the light. The reflection was not what he expected. His front teeth were shattered, edges jagged and uneven. Deep, unnatural streaks of neon pink, synthetic blue, and bright orange stained the enamel, looking like rot beneath the surface. He tried to move grounding him in his own body. The mirror slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the grass near the pile of plastic figures. He reached up, pressing a sticky finger to the rough, broken edges of his teeth. The air in the park suddenly felt cold and thin. His triumph evaporated, replaced by a raw, throbbing ache that pulsed in time with his racing heartbeat. The vendor slammed the ice cream cart lid shut with a deafening bang, the sound echoing through the trees like a final, sharp warning. The vendor did not hesitate. He shoved the ice cream cart aside, the heavy metal frame scraping violently against the pavement. He lunged forward, gripping Baby Grandpa by the wrist with fingers that felt like iron clamps. Baby Grandpa stumbled, his legs shaking, as he was jerked away from his pile of toys. They moved through the park in a blur, the grass whipping past their feet. The vendor did not look back, his pace relentless, dragging the smaller figure toward the edge of the park where the buildings loomed. Baby Grandpa tried to plant his heels, but the vendor pulled harder, forcing him into a stumbling run. They reached the sidewalk, the concrete hard beneath their soles, and veered toward a narrow building with a flickering glass door. The vendor kicked the door open. A wave of cold, sterile air hit them instantly. They crossed the threshold and skidded to a halt inside a cramped waiting room. The smell of mint and ozone was overwhelming. A single fluorescent light hummed overhead, casting a harsh, unblinking glare on the linoleum floor. The dentist office was silent, waiting, and the door behind them swung shut with a final heavy thud. Baby Grandpa climbed into the leather chair, his legs twitching. The seat groaned under his weight. He stared at the ceiling, his breath hitching as the dentist moved into his field of vision. She reached up, locking the overhead lamp into position. Ongum light flooded his mouth, exposing every jagged, neon-stained crack in his enamel. He squeezed his eyes shut, his hands gripping the armrests until his knuckles turned white. The dentist did not speak. She picked up a thin, cold metal probe from the tray. She tapped the probe against the center of his top row, testing the stability of the rotting teeth. The impact sent a jolt of raw nerve pain straight to his temples. He tried to pull back, but she held his chin firm with a steady, unyielding hand. She selected a pair of surgical pliers. With a sudden, decisive tug, she snapped the first tooth loose. A thin line of crimson tracked along his gum line. She worked with rhythmic, clinical speed, pulling each stained piece free and dropping them into a metal basin with a sharp, clattering sound. Each tug was a violent physical disruption. When she finished, his mouth felt hollow, exposed to the cold air of the room. The dentist did not pause to let him recover. She reached for a tray lined with pristine, white porcelain components. One by one, she aligned them against his raw, exposed gum line. She pressed each piece firmly into place. With a series of sharp, rhythmic clicks, the new teeth locked into his jaw. The fit was perfect. Baby Grandpa felt the cold, hard surface of the ceramic as it settled against his tongue, replacing the hollow ache with a solid, artificial weight. He tried to speak, but she held up a gloved finger, signaling him to remain still. She picked up a small, motorized brush head. A low, mechanical hum filled the room as the tool began to spin. she applied abrasive paste, working the brush across the surface of the new teeth in steady, circular motions. The friction created a faint, high-pitched whine. She polished them until the porcelain caught the overhead light, reflecting a brilliant, unnatural shine. She pulled the tool away and clicked it off. The silence returned, heavy and expectant. She handed him a small hand mirror. Baby Grandpa opened his mouth, staring at the perfectly aligned, glowing white row of teeth. The pain was gone, replaced by a strange, rigid perfection. The dentist set the mirror down on the metal tray. She reached into her pocket, pulling out 2 crinkled, silver foil mystery bags. She dropped them into his lap. Baby Grandpa looked down at the packages. The plastic crinkled loudly under his touch. He tore the first seam, his fingers trembling slightly as he pulled out a small, molded figure. He flipped it over, inspecting the detail. He tore the second bag open with more force, spilling another tiny, painted character into his palm. These were the missing pieces. He looked at the growing pile of toys scattered across the chair and the floor. He gathered them into a single heap, holding them against his chest. The weight of the plastic felt grounding. He looked at the dentist, his new teeth clicking together as he offered a small, stiff nod of gratitude. The terror of the chair had faded into a dull memory. He took a breath, testing the alignment of his jaw against the cool air. He gathered his collection, sliding the figures into his pockets one by one. The sharp edges of the plastic poked against his skin, but he did not mind. He stood up, steady on his feet, and moved toward the exit. The cool evening air hit his face as he stepped out onto the sidewalk. Baby Grandpa walked with a steady, measured pace, the weight of his toy collection tucked securely inside his pockets. With every breath he took, his new teeth tapped together, a sharp porcelain sound that reminded him of the dentist's chair. He reached up, feeling the smooth, artificial edges with his tongue. He navigated the familiar streets, turning the corner toward his front door. The house was quiet, bathed in the dim light of dusk. He moved through the hallway, his footsteps soft on the hardwood floor. He entered the bathroom, the porcelain sink gleaming under the overhead bulb. He reached into the cabinet, his hand closing around the familiar handle of his toothbrush. He squeezed a dab of paste onto the bristles, watching the foam swirl as he turned on the tap. He stared into the mirror, examining the bright, white row of teeth that had cost him so much to gain. He leaned forward, the bristles touching the enamel with a soft, scrubbing sound. He began to brush, slow and deliberate, determined to keep his new smile clean. The day of chaos and sugar had finally come to an end, replaced by the quiet, steady rhythm of maintenance.